Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome to another edition of Inside Arsenal. It is Tuesday. We are only one day away from Arsenal's return to the Champions League. How good does that sound? Very, very good indeed. Mikel Arteta will be speaking later today about 3:30 p.m. UK time, holding his press conference at London Colney ahead of that game tomorrow night against PSV. So we should get all the very latest from him. I imagine there's going to be an awful lot of excitement around the training ground at the moment. Arsenal work so hard. It's been a long old journey, isn't it? Since that haunting defeat against Bayern Munich 5-1 at the Emirates, 10-2 on aggregate. The last time Arsenal were in action in the Champions League. I can't believe how long ago that was. What's gone on since then, the changes at the club, but it feels very, very ready now, Arsenal, as a football club to return to the Champions League, I think, and I can't wait to see how they get on with that. So, yeah, keep your eyes peeled for Mikel Arteta's press conference. One thing to note before I get really sort of cracking into today's episode is that there is going to be no Inside Arsenal extra time tonight with myself and James Benge. Apologies for that, but James has been away on holiday and he's just messaged me. He's stuck at the airport. He's got a 4.5 hour delay at the airport and he's not going to get back until much later tonight, which means we're not going to be able to record. And because there's just no point recording tomorrow ahead of the Champions League game, we're going to do it on Thursday afternoon instead. So Inside Arsenal extra time this week will now be on Thursday night, not on Tuesday. So we'll be reflecting on hopefully a Champions League win for Arsenal, and we'll be looking ahead to North London derby as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. A little bit later on in the week than previously scheduled. Inside Arsenal extra time is now going to be on Thursday. Okay, let's talk about Arsenal then, shall we, and what's going on at the moment. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but the 2023-24 official squad photo has now been revealed. There it is. If you look watching this on YouTube, you could see it. Arsenal looking very, very smart there in their squad. It's a good squad. I think when you look at it on paper and you look at it like that and you see everyone lined up, it's a very strong squad, I think. Just the whole way through it just looks like a really strong squad. I know people are saying, oh, how Cedric got in there, but we all know Cedric's still there at the moment. But on the whole, you know, when you think where Arsenal have been over the last sort of 5-6 years, you look at the quality of the squad, the quality of the players, and then you look at this squad, it's very, very strong. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how they get on. It was interesting that Aaron Timber was as part of the squad photo as well. Not just that he was part of it, because that's probably too expected, but the fact he's walking pretty comfortably there and unaided, not on crutches. He was on crutches last time we saw him a couple of weeks ago, but now he's not on crutches and he was involved in the team. I've seen lots of stories, classic stories doing around on the internet this morning. Arsenal received massive Aaron Timber injury boost because he's seen like this. Look, he's not close to return. He's just undergone major surgery. He's got, you know, it's an ACL injury. Just because he's seen here walking around, don't suddenly think he's going to be back in about a month's time or anything like that. He's a long way back. He's got a long road of recovery still to go, so don't get too excited. But it is good just for him to be involved and stuff. You can see smiling there with William Saliba, but it felt good to be out on the grass and just to feel like a footballer again, because when you go through these type of injuries, and I remember Hector Bellerin talking about it at length during his sort of rehab, and when he did that sort of documentary afterwards, which was sort of following him during that rehab, and he spoke at times of how dark it could be for a footballer when you go through an injury like that and you're away from the rest of the team. They all go out to the training pitches every day. You have to go into, you know, the medical unit and just stretch and rehab and try and strengthen. You just got hours and hours every single day of every single week for months. And it could be a really dark time for footballers. So just something like this, I'm sure, will be really, really good for Aaron Timber to get on, just feel like part of the squad again, feel like part of the team again. But if you're getting excited that he's suddenly going to be back in action, just temper those expectations. It's not going to happen. But it was very good to see nonetheless. Okay, let's talk about Wednesday night, shall we? Like I said, Mikel will be giving his press conference a little bit later on today, around 3:30 p.m. or that's when it's scheduled. Often it runs late when it comes to UEFA press conferences. But so we'll get the very latest from him in terms of team news then. But from what we know so far, obviously, we're not expecting Gabriel Martinelli to play. Be interesting to hear what Mikel says about the extent of Martinelli's hamstring injury at the presser later on today. I mean, any sort of injury when it comes to a hamstring, especially for a player like Martinelli, relies so heavily on his pace and his sort of acceleration. it's not a good thing. And you would expect you're looking at 3 to 4 weeks out. I mean, there's another international break not too far around the corner. You probably look at that and wonder if Martinelli's going to be back in action before then. Hopefully it will. And who knows, maybe it got caught really, really early against Everton and it might not be a significant hamstring injury. And hopefully he could be back in a week or two. But I don't know. It's tough to feel really good about a hamstring problem, especially for a player like Martinelli with all of his strengths and how much his game is focused around speed and acceleration. But we'll get more from him. But look, he's not going to be playing tomorrow. I think we all know that. So there's going to be no Martinelli. Of course, Thomas Partey is still coming back from his injury as well. Still a couple of weeks away, we believe. So he's not going to be involved either. Urian Timber, of course, added to that sort of long-term injury list. But aside from that, Arsenal are looking pretty good when it comes to team news. Ahead of the game, you would expect probably Leandro Trossard to keep his place, given how he came on. He scored the goal against Everton. He looked very, very good in the second half. You would expect Trossard will start in place of Martinelli on the left. And then it's just a case of what Mikel is thinking when it comes to some of the other key areas on his team. There is that big game on Sunday, of course, the North London derby, now just around the corner. And when you're choosing your team for Wednesday night, he's got to be thinking ahead to Sunday as well. Mikel Arteta, it's very, very hard. Sunday will be the third game in 7 days by the time it rolls around. And you've got to manage your squad and manage it well. So it'll be interesting to see if that plays into his thinking at all when it comes to the Champions League game on Wednesday night, which, again, I hate using that phrase on paper, but when you're thinking about what potentially will be the easier game out of the two, PSV or Tottenham, you would maybe say PSV, but it's so essential that Arsenal get this Champions League campaign off to a winning start on Wednesday night. They cannot afford a slip up. PSV are in good form. They've won all 4 of their opening games so far in the Eredivisie. They sit top of the table. They've scored 13 goals in those 4 games. They've only conceded 1. So they're playing good football. They're going to arrive here with good momentum. They showed against Arsenal last season. There are no pushovers. They comfortably beat Arsenal in Holland. Arsenal edge into a win at the Emirates 1-0 against them. So they're going to be no pushovers. Arsenal cannot afford to take them lightly. And I'm sure Mikel he certainly will know that when it comes to his team selections. And it's just a case of what is he going to do and what are the key decisions that he is going to have to make. And they sort of run through the sort of central point of the team, I would say. And we know with the goalkeeper, that's going to be a big thing on Wednesday night. What do you do? He brought David Raya in against Everton, kept a clean sheet. It was a big decision. It's one that's generated so much talking points, so much speculation. There's already stories doing the rounds about Aaron Ramsdale potentially leaving, Chelsea being interested, Bayern Munich being interested. And look, while it's very, very early for that, and Aaron Ramsdale's not going to go anywhere this season, Arsenal are not going to make a change in January and sell Aaron Ramsdale and bring in a goalkeeper. If something were to happen, you would think it will happen in the summer. But just making that decision was always going to generate stories like this. If you leave, basically, Aaron Ramsdale is competing for the England #1 spot. He just played for England against Scotland. He's just been named amongst the sort of the 9 or 8 best goalkeepers in Europe, up for the award winning the Ballon d'Or for the goalkeepers. So if you leave him out of the team, it's going to generate massive headlines, and that's what it's done. And these stories doing the rounds now of potential interest in Aaron Ramsdale, there will be. Clubs will be interested, and that's just the way it's going to be. So it'll be really interesting. Will he come back in? Is this going to be how it's going to go from now on? Raya in goal for the Premier League, Aaron Ramsdale in goal for the cup competitions, including the Champions League. Will that be enough to keep Aaron Ramsdale happy? We shall wait and see. But it's a big decision facing Mikel Arteta with the goalkeepers. Love to hear what you guys would think. Of course, who should play in goal tomorrow night? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Should it be Aaron Ramsdale? Should it be David Raya? Elsewhere, Kai Havertz was left on a bench against Everton. Big decision. I was surprised. I thought Havertz would play that game and start that game. In a way, I think it was a really good decision. It worked out to be a good decision, and it kind of showed that you're rewarded for good performances. Fabio Vieira has played so well when he's come off the bench. He's made big impacts, and he got his reward for that. He got a start against Everton. I think that sends out a really good signal to the rest of the squad. Now it's what do you do on Wednesday night? Does Kai Havertz come back in? Does Fabio Vieira keep his place? If he does he then play against Tottenham and start 3 games in a week? So there's big decisions there to be made. Kai Havertz, we know, is very experienced when it comes to Champions League football. He scored the winning goal in a Champions League final. He's been brought in for Champions League football, been a big reason why Arsenal decided to bring Kai Havertz in. So does he come back into the side? And then what do you do up front? I think it's a given. I'll be very surprised if Gabriel Jesus doesn't start against PSV I think Eddie struggled against Everton. He's had a good run in the side. He's played all the games so far this season. But Gabriel Jesus, it feels like the time is right to give him a start ahead of Tottenham at the weekend. Give him 60 minutes potentially tomorrow. Get those minutes into his leg, and then that will, you think he'll be fit and properly raring to go against Tottenham, which I fully expect he'll start that game as well on Sunday. So, as much as I call it a big decision, I don't think that one, out of all of them, I think that one's a relatively simple decision for me. I think Gabriel Jesus has to start this one, to not only because I think Eddie's struggling and Jesus feels like a good time to come in, but also to get 60 minutes into his legs as you continue to build up his fitness ahead of that game against Tottenham. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you think Mikel should start? What would your predicted 11 be? What would the 11 be that you would choose? Let me know anything like that I've discussed. Let me know, as always, in the comments below. Okay, let's move on to some of your questions and comments now. There's one here from Le Champere. Says, hi Charles, in my opinion, Arsenal's move for Raya has been a really smart business from a financial perspective. They now have 2 top Premier League proven goalkeepers on the books, which will make for a fascinating battle with the outlook of making a hefty profit or one of the 2 next summer, or against all the odds, they will accept Arteta's co-goalkeeping model and live happily ever after. Don't think that will happen. If Ramsdale moves on, look what United played for Onana. And with depreciation of his transfer fee already well advanced, the accounting department will have something to cheer about for once. Seems like a breath of fresh air. And yes, that whole Deeney deal was atrocious business. I agree with that. Certainly. Yeah, look, I think whatever happens, Arsenal are in a really good position. As much as it is a difficult situation for the goalkeepers, especially for the one who's not going to be playing, which at the moment looks like could be Ramsdale. As much as a difficult position for them, for Arsenal, it's a really good position that potentially for one season only, because I don't see this playing out long term. It just doesn't work like that. It's going to be, like I said, in the summer, I imagine one will go. But for this season only, Arsenal are in a really good position of having 2 top quality goalkeepers. If one got injured, another one can come in, and there's no major drop off in form. So the squad looks really strong from that point of view. And I agree, and it's the way at the moment I think it will play out, is that Raya will be number 1, and I think Ramsdale will probably go in the summer. And that's no information based. That's just opinion based, because, like I said, Ramsdale's pushing to become England number 1. He's a proven Premier League goalkeeper now. He's not going to want to sit on the bench for a long term. And I don't see this co-goalkeeping model, as you call it there, I just don't see it working for the long term. As much as Mikel can talk about it, can have all the sound bites in the press conference, it just won't happen long term, because one of the goalkeepers is not going to be happy. He's going to want to be playing. And if Arsenal do end up having to sell Ramsdale in the summer, like I said, there's already links to Chelsea and Bayern Munich, they will certainly make a healthy profit on him, no doubt about that. And there will be a lot of interest in Aaron Ramsdale come the summer as well. So, yeah, I think whatever happens from a financial perspective for a season, in terms of football perspective, I think Arsenal are in a strong position when it comes to the goalkeepers. Here's one here from Bering Richard 3850 says, hi Charles, I think Mikel saying he regretted not changing a goalkeeper in the 60th, 85th minute could have been during the Europa League game against Sporting. I expected Turner to come in before the penalty shootout. I thought he was a better shot stopper than Rambo. Then the game against Fulham, because Raya is better when it comes to crosses. Fulham were using counter-attack, crosses and set piece. No wonder their equaliser came from a set piece. Yeah, I think the Sporting one's interesting. A few of you got in touch and mentioned that Sporting game. The only thing that I would be I'm not sure about is that the way Arteta was talking about it in the press conference after Everton was that he felt he needed to change the momentum of the game. And so I don't think making that change for a penalty shootout changes the momentum of the game. I think tactically it's a very, it probably would have worked, or it could have worked, because Turner's a great goalkeeper when it comes to penalties. But it was just the way Mikel was talking about it there. It felt to me like he was talking about how he wanted the momentum of games to change by making these goalkeeper substitutions. And I don't think doing that's purely for a penalty shootout. I don't think that would have been aimed at changing the momentum of the game. I think the Fulham one, it certainly makes sense that one of the games he's talking about would be that one, because we saw what happened. Arsenal went 2-1 in front, and they seemed to sit back a little bit, even though Fulham were down to 10 men, and that gave Fulham the option of getting forward, trying to get themselves a set piece, which they did, which they scored from. So I think certainly that is one of the games he must have been talking about. Here's one from Jamin1051, says, 100% agree, Charles. It's all about control. It's about more control, but also getting more squad members in voices earlier in the season and figuring out some more relationships on the pitch, which we really lacked last season. I think the idea that we're building and wish I like the idea that we're building and wish some fans would just relax a bit more about not being on as fire as we were after 5 games last season. Interestingly enough, on that, if Arsenal beat Spurs on Sunday, then they will have a better record after 6 games than they did at this point last season, which would be pretty mad considering how I think we all accept that Arsenal have not been brilliant yet this season. They haven't really hit top gear. Yet last season, they were flying, were getting praised by everyone by their performances. But of course, they lost their 6th game. After winning their first 5, they went to Old Trafford and then lost the 6th game. So they were on 15 points from a possible 18. If Arsenal beat Spurs on Sunday, they will have 16 points from a possible 18, which will be a really impressive start, even though they haven't played particularly well. And yes, I agree. I do look at what Arsenal, how they're playing now, and I think there is definitely, a deliberate ploy to try and get more control in games. And that's what Mikel Arteta wants. And maybe that will be a little bit more boring, if that's the right word. But, sometimes you look at Manchester City, you watch their games, and they are pretty dull because they just control them so much. And I wonder if that is the plan this season, and that's what Mikel thinks Arsenal need to do to get to next level, to be a little bit less chaotic than they were at times last season, and maybe a little bit less emotional as well. Okay, lastly here's one from Live Learn and Teach 7402 says, doesn't Gabriel have to play the ball forward? It didn't look forward to me until it hit the Everton player. Am I missing something? Is there some small point on some law I am not getting? This is, of course, in relation to the disallowed goal at Goodison Park when Gabriel's square pass took a deflection off Beto, went into the path of Nketiah, and then Martinelli ended up scoring, but the goal was ruled out after that VAR check. Well, the law, it doesn't matter if the ball's going sideways or backwards. The direction of travel of the ball does not matter for this. And so, yeah, by the letter of the law, it was a correct decision. So, yeah, although, a lot of people have said this, a lot of people said he's not playing the ball forward, he was playing it backwards or playing it sideways. So why does it matter that Eddie was in an offside position? But the direction of travel, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be played forward. It doesn't. The way he played it, it doesn't make any difference. The fact that Eddie was offside when the ball deflected into his path, it just doesn't matter that it was played backwards. So yeah, and look, I'm not absolute expert by any means when it comes to the offside rules. I don't think there are very, very few people are, but Dale Johnson over at ESPN, he does a very good sort of VAR review type piece every single Monday, sort of reflecting on the big controversial moments. He's the person to follow on social for all of these things, and he gives really good explanations of the law and how VAR is put into practice. And he gave a really good review, as usual, after the Everton game on the Monday, explaining all of this. Actually, I'll drop it in the description below, the link to it if you haven't read it yet. And he explains really well why the goal was ruled out and why, by the letter of the law, it was the correct decision. All right, that's it from me today, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, have a very good end to Tuesdays. Remember, there is no Inside Arsenal Extra Time. As I said at the start of this episode, that will now be moved to Thursday because James is stuck somewhere in Europe at an airport, being delayed by 4.5 hours. So, unfortunately, no recording, but we will be doing it on Thursday night this week instead. Until then, everyone, have a very good Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow. Champions League football returns to the Emirates Stadium tomorrow. So have a great day. Until then, we'll be back. Speak to you very, very soon.